All right, hey, Rant and chill. How's it going, Mr. Deadman? I hope you're having a good time, as much as you can. A lot of stuff is going down, a lot of stuff is happening. There's a lot of drama and a lot of tension right now. I said that this episode would be a break from the negative. I felt on that because we're getting into CPS, Child Protective Services. But it is going to be a break from politics. Child Protective Services. How do you feel about them? Some people think Child Protective Services destroy families. And there's truth to that. Oh yeah, there's times where Child Protective Services definitely destroys families, rips them apart. Some people say Child Protective Services serves a purpose. The same way law enforcement does. Sure, yeah, police serve a purpose. But even those that say, hey, police serve a purpose, even the Blue Lives Matter people, the ones who take it all the way where they're licking the boot, even they think the cop that pulls them over is an asshole. Come on now. If they're going to be honest. If they say otherwise, you know they're not being honest. All right, guys. The cigar I'm smoking tonight is it's another punch, Knuckle Buster. I've not tried this before. Habano. Okay. This is the 4.5 by 52? Yeah. Okay. 4.5 by 52. Short, but is it good? It's a cheap cigar. It's not gonna break your wallet, put a dent in it at all. But is it any good? Well, we're gonna find out here. I'm getting into this. Chris Cushman mentioned something in the chat. That's pretty important. They're inconsistent. They are inconsistent, CPSs. Sometimes they act on little to no information when they shouldn't, and other times they sit back and let horrible shit happen. That's true. That is true. The inconsistency is a problem. Oh my God. The match is not striking. What the fuck? You want to strike, I want to light this cigar with a match, but I mean, you saw that it was not striking. I smell it. Dang. There we go. Yeah, CPS can be very inconsistent, and we'll get into that. We'll get into why all of that. We will. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about CPS in the state of Texas. I'm not sure about how other states operate. This all pertains to the state of Texas. I would imagine that they would be too different. The differences would be in what the state allows as far as discipline goes. In the state of Texas, parents have the legal right, the parental right, to discipline their kids with physical discipline. How do I feel about that? It happens. The belt, the chancla, go get in the switch. It happens. And it builds character. I'm fine with that. You have a problem with that? Well, we're just going to be disagreeing. One more. The tobacco is not taken for some reason. All right, these matches are short. Oh, there we go. That's much better. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So right away, we had a taste of the cigar. Let me see. Oddly enough, like notes of wood, pepper, a little bit of espresso, a little bit faint. This is a medium, like mild cigar. It's not powerful. It's not. Yeah, it's a mild smoke. So, would I recommend it? Yeah, it's not bad. I'm liking it, enjoying it. Is it my favorite cigar? No, not my favorite. Would I pick it up again? Maybe. I mean, depends on the mood, I guess. If I was gonna go for a short cigar like this, I'd probably go for the nubs. The nubs, I really do enjoy them. Okay. So, and Chris mentions I need a butane cigar torch. I have one. I wanted to light this one here with the match. That's how you're supposed to light it. Then again, it's not supposed to take 2 matches. 3 actually, was one didn't take. So while everybody's talking politics and talking crazy stuff, let's talk Child Protective Services. Do they serve a purpose? Are they important? Well, I mean, do you want kids to be abused? I mean, do you want kids to be left in households that are abusive? Do you? I mean, let's start there. Let's start with that. I mean, and I understand this. I don't want the government in my business. I'm sure you don't want the government in your business any more than they have to. And I say have to because do we as a society just sit aside and just let parents abuse their kids? Do we just allow that to happen? Do we just let that happen? Do we? It's not good. A society that promotes and encourages child abuse is a society that's doomed to implode and deteriorate because it's destroying their future. A society that allows child abuse is not much better. And of course, I understand. Child Protective Services has their baggage, has their... Oh, yeah. They have their baggage. They have their issues. It's not a perfect system. Far from it. You're not going to get a perfect system because you're dealing with people. And people, even if they can look all nice and they pass a background check, doesn't mean that they're not fucked up. Here's the thing. I think most people would agree that, we shouldn't allow children that are being abused by their parents to just stay in the house. So then what do we do? Do we as a community take certain actions? That would be great. That would work in small towns and small communities. Sure. Yeah. That would be a small local government getting involved. Should it be a town thing? Should it be something set by town, city by city? Well, I mean, CPS is a state thing. Each state has their own set of policies that are based on certain codes that are established in family law. In Texas, is the Texas Family Code, family law, or Texas Family Code. It's a massive book, a thick book. I don't know, probably 10% of that, because it pertains to a lot of stuff for just family law in general, and I don't have time for that. But here's the deal. Here's the problem a lot of people have with CPS. Like Chris said, they act on a lot of times poor information, little information. They go way too far in that. Imagine this. Let's paint this scenario here. Imagine this. Imagine that. Let's say you are a good mom, a good dad. You are good parents. You have kids. You have 2 kids or whatever. Okay, you guys are doing fine. Mind your own business. You know, kids are in school. You guys are working full time, providing for them. No drama, no issues. You have a good support system, good family. But let's say somebody just decides to call in a case. Somebody that kind of knows your son's name or daughter's name. Someone who kind of knows just very rudimentary, elementary information on your family. And they call in a case and they say some wild, bizarre shit like, oh my God, you won't believe it. The dad and the mom are shooting up meth together while the kids are watching and putting lines of coke out for the kids for breakfast. It's like, how do you know this? Right? Just creating a picture that's horrible, right? That the kids are part of the drug fest that happens. The kids clean it up after they're done. The mom's a whore. A bunch of foot traffic comes in through, you know. Oh, the whole neighborhood has had a turn with her, you know. Stuff like that. From an anonymous reporter. From an anonymous report. Now that is a wild fucking claim, right? A wild claim. But that claim, that's all it takes. That's all it takes for an investigation to be open. That's all it takes for you, for your family to be investigated. So you could have been doing no wrong to anybody, doing just fine. Like I said, you're working full time, providing for your kids a safe, stable home. You have family support. You have friends. The neighborhood knows you. Maybe this person who called in had some beef with you. Maybe someone had a grudge, an axe to grind against you. You just didn't understand. You just didn't know. That's all it takes. That's all it takes for CPS to knock on your door. And now, in a case like that with drugs and it's like that, they'll be coming at you with lots of questions. They're coming at you with some judgment. Ask you to take a drug test. Oh, and if you don't take that drug test, if you say, no, I don't want to take that drug test because what the hell are you talking about? What? If you say you don't want to take that drug test, which is your right to do so, then they see you as refusing to take it because you're hiding something. If you're not hiding something, why would you just not take it? Right? But now let's say, in this scenario, like I said, you guys are a good family, providing for the kids, working full time, everything's good. But you went to a Willie Nelson concert not too long ago and had some marijuana. Hey, you go to a Willie Nelson concert, you're going to have marijuana, right? You're going to be smoking weed. Oh, maybe while the kids are with the grandparents, you had a date night and hey, you bust out some weed. Maybe you were watching Friday. I don't know. But the kids weren't around. The kids are with their grandma. And y'all didn't bring the kids back home until the next morning, way into it. And so everything is good. No harm, no foul. But here's the thing. Let's say you did take that drug test. Oh. Well, it looks like you have marijuana in your system. Well, now we're going to ask you to do services. Now we're going to ask you to relocate out the household. We're going to have to ask to place kids with grandparents and with policies and safety plans and all sorts of documentation. It's just so overbearing over something so small, over something that could have been avoided. Over something so overbearing and bullshit. If you ever have a case like that, I mean, if CPS ever comes into your life, and they ask you to take a drug test, it's your right to say no. You can say no. And the CPS worker might then think you're hiding something. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Until they get a court order, until they have enough evidence to actually go before a judge and get an order to force you to take a drug test, to order you to take a drug test, you do not have to. That is your right. So, if you are in that situation, and I would say, don't take it. Know your rights. Because the thing with CPS is that they are overbearing. They do act on little information. They go way too far on it. Quite a bit. Very often. In fact, there was a case not too long ago. I think happened last year, actually. A big lawsuit in Texas. A settlement. A pretty hefty settlement. Over fast, rash action and poor intel. Provided by a hospital, by the way. Provided by a hospital. That led to the removal of a child and children. Flat out. See, here's the thing. CPS has crazy power. Like, they could take your kid away from you. They can get a court order to take your kid away from you. Are there examples where caseworkers have lied to the court to get grounds, lied or fabricated or twisted things to get that to work? Oh, you bet your ass there are. Some CPS workers, get a personal grudge, like a sort of bias. A sort of bias that could only be described as a personal grudge against certain families for various reasons. So they'll twist things, kind of word things in a very strong language on their little affidavits. But this case I was talking about in Texas, what it is, it happens like this quite a bit. If I remember the details correctly. All right. So a mom of 3 kids, I believe. One of them was a toddler. Actually, well, before I get into this, let me make sure, because I might be confusing this with another case. Hold on one moment. Let me make sure, because this is something you can find this. You can Google this too. Let's see here. If I remember correctly, I think the child was. She was not. It was a baby. It was like not even 2. Let's see. And the child was thought to have head trauma. And the doctor said that they had head trauma. And based on that, because they had a brain injury, a skull fracture, and you have a baby with a skull fracture, CPS would be like, okay, yeah, we're looking at abuse. We're gonna start taking kids out of the home. What they're waiting on then is the doctor to say, yeah, this is a skull fracture. This looks like abuse. Let's see. Okay, I think this is... Okay, yeah. All right. So Houston doctors reported mother for abuse. But judge said it was CPS that harmed their kids. Okay. See, this is the thing about this case. We're going to get into this a little bit here. This is a good example of things going in a weird direction. Okay. Root part of this article. It was a short fall, just under 2 feet. The kids had been playing in the sprinkler, trying to cool off in the front yard on that July afternoon. Melissa set 5-month-old Mason on a camping chair before turning to wrangle wet clothes off her 2-year-old daughter. Now the 5-month-old rolled off the chair. And a fall that was under 2 feet. But that fall was all it took. They hit its head. Let's see. After Mason fell in the driveway, and you see, here's my problems with this case. When I hear this, let me just spell out the facts here. Okay, so you have Mason, who's 5-month-old, was placed on a lawn chair, a camping chair, while the mom went inside to get clothes and stuff. And the chair was on top of the driveway. The child rolled off the chair, hit its head on the driveway. Is that not neglectful supervision? What is that? Like, that's kind of weird, right? Like, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? I mean, at least put the chair on the grass or something. On the driveway. Wow. If it rolls off, it's going to hit the driveway. Hit pavement. Okay. But he fell in the driveway. Melissa scooped him up, ran upstairs, watching his head swell as he wailed. And I misspoke. Apparently she was there. She saw the fall. She saw the fall happen. So it's not like Melissa, the mom, went inside the home and get clothes. No, she was taking clothes off of her two-year-old. She was right there, and the 5-month-old was right there in the chair and rolled off the chair and hit the driveway. So it's not like she was neglecting supervision. She was right there. But here's the thing. Here's how CPS operates. They look at that. They don't look at the whole information. They just look at part of that, just like how I did right there. That little mistake, little thing you can just overlook. They look at the. If they see that framing right there. That's it for them. That's it. All they need now is a doctor to say, "Hey, this is abuse." And here's what happened. See, I don't know about in other cities, but in Houston, these hospitals, they have a certain care team that work, that screen all these cases for abuse. It's a bunch of doctors or whatever that look over information and they determine whether or not there was actual abuse or whatever. Like I said, the hospital called in this case. But what's interesting is that the doctor didn't say that it was abuse. There's some weird information that came out. Weird stuff. But let's see. Let's see if I remember it correctly. Let's see. Let's see what they report here. Let's see. The Brights stayed that night at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, praying their son would be okay. The next day, a medical team came into the room. They had reviewed some scans of Mason's head and had questions. Had the baby fallen a second time? If not, why were there two skull fractures? Two skull fractures. Two skull fractures. Wow. The Brights were baffled. They didn't remember any other fall and didn't know what else could be causing that sort of injury. Unsatisfied by the answers, a doctor training to become a child abuse pediatrician typed up a disquieting note on the boy's medical records. Presence of multiple skull fractures is concerning for a non-accidental skeletal injury, and that's all you need. That's all you need. Now, this child actually had prior medical operations, from what I recall, and I might get into that in this article, that would explain why it had that prior head trauma. Let's see. The hospital shared the concerns of Child Protective Services as required by law, and boom, CPS gets in there. They get this. It's going to be removal, guys. There's those sorts of cases. That's all it really is. Let's see. The Brights were swept into a bureaucratic child welfare system, which it is. Good God, the paperwork is insane. That relies heavily on the opinions of doctors who specialize in spotting abuse. But if your job is to spot abuse and everything, if you see things like head injuries and bruises, and that's you're trained that is abuse. Every time you see it, that is abuse, and that's what it is, right? Turns out there's more to it. The Brights denied harming the baby and initially cooperated with the state child welfare investigation, but grew frustrated as it dragged on for weeks. After Mason returned home and was recovering, Melissa and Dylan heard little from Child Protective Services. Okay, so they were cooperating with the family. They returned home. They're recovering, doing fine. But then CPS comes knocking on their door for a removal. That's fucked up. That's real fucked up. The case dragged on for weeks before CPS came knocking with that removal. For weeks. What was happening there? What was happening during in that time? On September 19, 2018, a caseworker showed up at their home with an emergency court order. He hated to do it. Dylan remembers the caseworker saying, but the state was taking custody of both children. Because here's the thing, especially with their little kids, to take custody of one, take custody of all. Just about. That's how CPS operates, at least here in Texas. See? And how do you guys feel about CPS? How do you feel about it? This case is an interesting example here. In the kitchen, over the baby's cries, the Brights were asked where the children were going, what was the emergency. Dylan knew they couldn't fight a court order, not that late at night. So he wrote out instructions for strangers who would be caring for their children. Charlotte, the 2-year-old, had a dairy allergy. Mason, still nursing, would need formula. This is important. This information wasn't passed on. All right, let's see. What else? Let's see. I'm curious. I believe, the details of this, because it's all out there. Okay. So I believe this Mason child, had medical operations and stuff that, let's see here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's get to this. So the Brights didn't know it, but they were under suspicion almost as soon as they showed up at the hospital early on the evening of July 18th, 2018. The first X-ray, roughly 2 hours after the fall, prompted concerns when it showed both the bigger fracture in the front of Mason's skull and the smaller hairline fracture in the back. That's important. Remember, that's what triggered the call. That's what triggered the hospital call CPS. Texas children's doctors also were concerned that Mason had suffered bleeding between his brain and skull, which child abuse pediatricians commonly associate with violent shaking, physical abuse, not short falls. That night, even before Melissa and Dylan fell asleep in their son's hospital room, a doctor typed up a note raising the possibility of non-accidental injury. The next morning, the Brights were still waiting to find out how severe Mason's injury was when they sat down with the new team of doctors. It was not the neurosurgeons or the hematologists that had been treating Mason. It was the hospital's child abuse team, though they didn't realize it at the time. The doctors put his x-rays on the screen and showed the second smaller fractures. How did it happen? One asked. You tell me. Dylan remembers saying, "You're supposed to be giving me information about my son." He realized then, he said, that they were in trouble. Afterward, CPS investigators showed up at the hospital asking questions. Lots of questions. CPS comes in. LeVar Jones, the caseworker, convinced Brights to agree to an in-home monitoring plan, a safety plan. Once Melissa and Dylan left the hospital, they would have to make sure they were always with other relatives at home to supervise them with their interactions with their kids. For the Brights, the day that followed were a barrage of tests, doctors, questions, and anxiety. A neurosurgeon drilled a hole in a Mason's skull to relieve the pressure. 5 days after Mason's fall, on July 23rd, Shingvi, the doctor training to become a child abuse pediatrician, honored the findings in a statement. All right. Like I said, I'm just reading this, make sure I remember this case. I gotta tell you, this is a good example to show how CPS could take information that, little information, and they see what looks like abuse and go far with it and treat it like it's abuse. On paper so far, this sounds like it is abuse, right? This sounds like it is, at least it could be child abuse. Something's going on. These doctors don't know the family. They don't know what's going on. They just see an injury and they're just basing off of that. They don't know how it happened. They won't even ask how it happened. Oh, the family didn't even know about the second fracture. Couldn't a simple fall cause two fractures? Is that possible? Is that not possible? This is one of those cases very recently that was shut down by the judge. And CPS had to pay quite a bit of money. Let's see. Let's talk about the injuries. It gets in here. Mason's Bright's injuries. So Texas Children's Hospital's doctors reported the following after examining a 5-month-old Mason. They said the injuries appeared too severe to have been the result of a single fall in the driveway. While the reported fall could account for one of the skull fractures, it does not explain the other fracture or the extent of Mason's intercranial bleeding, said the doctor. If non-mobile babies with unexplained injuries are returned onto the same care environment in which unexplained injuries happened, there's a risk for further and more severe injury. That's how they operate, and I understand that logic. I get that. But let's talk about this. Okay, we'll get into this more. I'm sure there's articles can tell us. In response to that last question on the form, is this child's condition consistent with abuse and or neglect? The doctor circled yes. But the doctor's report came a day before a key test result revealed that Mason may have suffered from von Willebrand's disease. So, okay, this is important. The doctor's report that this child appears to have been victim of abuse, that the injury is consistent with abuse, came before, a day before, a very important test result that could have explained why the injury was the way that it was because of a fall. So the key test result revealed that Mason may have suffered from von Willebrand disease, a clotting disorder that can lead to excessive bleeding and injuries that, according to published accounts, are sometimes confused with child abuse. We know this now. Like, once again, we are being reminded in this article that just because someone says that they are an expert, because they are a doctor, it doesn't mean that they are, in fact, an expert. Look, if their job is to see and look for abuse, they're going to see something. If they see something that looks like abuse, they're going to call it abuse. Grim Cheers the chat. Oh, that's what I talked about earlier. Grim Cheers talks. My problem with CPS is that it's abused by people wanting revenge on people. Two moms fighting at school. One calls CPS on the other because she's mad. That happens. That happens quite a bit. A lot of cases are actually spite cases. A lot of cases are either spite cases or people calling in, let's say, discipline, physical discipline as abuse. In Texas, that's fine. You can spank, you can use the belt, you can use the chancla. CPS workers will tell you don't do that, but really, they have, I mean, it's your right. You can do that. I've even seen cases where the parents went crazy on this kid. They whipped his ass. It was black and blue. That kid was removed, but the judge said, fuck you. That kid goes back home because that's dad's right. The dad could whip the son's ass. Do you know what state you're in, son? You're in Texas. Though that may not be a great example. Because that particular case I just talked about, that kid later on, you know what ended up happening with him? He hanged himself. He died. He killed himself. And he left a note. He left it. It sounds so absurd. It sounds, but he left a note. He left a note that said why he did it. It's because he had enough. He couldn't take it anymore. Was the judge right then? Was the judge ordered the kid to go back home right then? Sure, yeah, he was right then. What he saw then was fine, I guess. But was there ongoing emotional abuse later on? We're talking about years later. That same kid, CPS is in the life, in and out, in and out. And that kid hung himself. You know, from that case, that example, pretty extreme. But that goes to show you that even cases that look like it could be, about discipline, maybe something minor, but there's a deeper thing to that, a deeper element. In those cases, you get kind of messy and kind of show the sort of imbalance, the imbalance that is with CPS, and that there is obviously a concern there, and they definitely should have done something. At least they definitely had the opportunity to do something, for that kid. but where the ball was dropped exactly. Jesus. Man. But spy calls? Oh, they definitely happen. I can't tell you how many times there are cases where, oh, okay. I can give you a recent example. Okay, so this family, they have a kid, right? The family's fine. They're doing just fine. They are working full time. They're working full time at a plant. So 6 days a week they're working. All right, they're getting constantly drug tested because of where they work, right? They have a roommate. Everything's fine. The roommate's actually the stepdad's brother. They asked the stepdad's brother has a girlfriend, and she's going to be part of this. Follow me on this, okay? It's family drama, so there's a lot of people. The stepdad's brother was asked to pitch in for groceries because he's staying there for a little while. And it's like, okay, he had no problem with it. But the stepdad's brother's girlfriend had a problem with it. It caused a huge ordeal, a huge scene in front of the house between the stepdad's brother and the stepdad's girlfriend, stepbrother girlfriend. Jesus Christ. It'd be easier if I said the names, but I can't say the names. But yeah, a huge fight, huge thing, where that girlfriend slashes tires and all this stuff, and then was blowing up the mom's phone, accusing her of trying to sleep with her boyfriend, accusing her of all this stuff. Huge thing. So then there's this case that generates a case called in by an anonymous. That apparently the mom and the stepdad are having drug parties, weed, cocaine, all that stuff. And the child's in on it and cleans up afterwards. And the mom is just is banging a married guy or something. It's a homewrecker. Okay, sounds crazy. Holy shit. All right, let's talk to this family. And in a case like this, in this particular example, if the screener had done their job a little bit better and asked, "Hey, how do you know about this? How do you know this information?" Maybe they could have gotten something to shut it down, because you start asking, "Hey, how do you know this?" and they can't explain. They'll say, "Oh, I heard the information from," because the person reported claimed that they heard the information from her daughter, because apparently the child of concern said something at school to someone else. However, they couldn't name the school that the child went to. When they said she was related to the child, I was like, "How are you related? You report in this case. How are you related to the child again? The child of concern? Oh, you're the aunt? Okay. So, how is it that we don't... Wait. So what's the mom's birthday? Oh, I don't know. Wait. If you're the aunt, that means you're the mom's sister or sister-in-law. If you're the mom's sister, you should know the birth date. What's the birth date? I don't know. Okay. Then who's the baby daddy? I don't know. You don't know either one of those things. Okay. So now we know you're not the aunt. Okay. So how are you related again? How did this happen? You know. But really, in a case like that, allegations like that, they're not going to shut it down and take. You know, someone, like I said earlier in the beginning of this podcast, someone can just say all sorts of crazy claims about you or any neighbor, really. Just think about it. Anyone can make any crazy claims about anyone, and if they're wild enough, they're going to have to be investigated. They're going to have to be looked at. So that's what happened with that case. Of course, information came out, and you find out later on that the family is doing fine. They spend most of their time at work, working on a plant, at the plants, and they're constantly drug tested. Drug parties. Pff, they don't even have time for drug parties. What are you talking about? What? That's a simple case to shut down. But it sucks that CPS was in their life, and they question them. That part does suck. Okay. So yeah, let me ask you guys again, you guys tuning in now, Child Protective Services, how do you feel about them? Do you feel that they're necessary? Do you feel that they're not necessary? Do you want to get rid of them? Do you think that they're just, kidnappers, or do they need to be reworked? Some policies need to be changed. I gotta tell you that there's some things that happen in particular reasons because of policy. Not really because of what's best for the child, but because of policy. Let's give... Okay. Because of policy. Let's talk about some things here. The cigar went out. Okay, let's talk about this particular case. That's what I'm on right here. So this is a good example of CPS being overbearing and really more concerned about policy than concerned about really what's best for the child. Okay. See, so not too long ago, there's this case where this mom... Oh, 1 second. I'll light the cigar again. This mom was pulled over. The driver had some stuff on her, and the mom had a warrant for her arrest. With the mom was a 2-year-old. So since the mom was arrested, obviously the mom can't care for the 2-year-old. So the mom was questioned by law enforcement, the arresting officer. Where's the baby daddy? Where's family? The mom doesn't know who the dad is, at least doesn't want the dad around for reasons. For reasons that CPS definitely knows, because she has a lot of history with domestic violence as the victim, whatever. But long story short, it ended up where the child was placed in a protective facility, like holding facility. Waiting for a particular CPS worker to either pick them up or get family to pick them up. Now, at this point of the case, and this is like the very beginning, at this point, any sort of placement with a relative, I'll back up a little bit. So we have the situation where the mom's arrested, the dad, we don't know where the dad is at. The child is at a CPS facility, sort of office / facility place, waiting for something to happen. So the child's not in foster care yet. The child's not a ward of the state yet. CPS doesn't have custody of the child. It's sort of in limbo right there. Something needs to be done ASAP. Family, the only real relatives that had been located were in Missouri. And they were located in Missouri because of a prior case, a recent case that had been closed months ago, where the mom had pretty much given her kids, relocated her kids to her mom, to the grandmother that lives in Missouri. So months before this case came in, the mom gave the kids to her grandma, to the kid's grandma, okay? And she lives in Missouri. So the concern here now is that, wait a second. So the grandma that was supposed to be protective of these kids somehow allowed the 2-year-old to be back with the mom? How did that happen? What happened there? Why is that? And I get that concern. However, in the prior case, it was never documented that it was discussed with the grandmother to not allow the 2-year-old to go back with the mom at all or anything like that. And it was holidays. It was around Christmas. So, the grandmother allowed the 2-year-old to go back down to spend time with its mom. And during that visit, obviously, the mom was driving with somebody she shouldn't be driving with, and the mom had a warrant out for her arrest. The mom, has some issues. The child was actually going to be picked up later on. But, yeah. Now, here's the thing. That grandma expressed that she was going to come down to get the kid. Okay. It's like, okay. So you have a grandmother that wants to come down. And the grandmother, so far, I mean, she is protective, kind of, sort of, in a way, but not so much in the fact that there's a chance she can let the child go back to the mom. But the grandmother was like, she swore she was not going to let the child go back with the mom. She disavowed the mom and said, if I could disown her, I totally would. She totally screwed up. This was supposed to be just a simple Christmas visit. Is it? Or was there something more, But instead of allowing like a family member or family friend to pick up the child and transport the child to Missouri, after verifying that the people are who they claim they are, instead of that, what the plan was to pretty much keep the child here in place with a family friend. Now, this is a messy situation. What is the best interest of this child? Is it true? I mean, okay, let's back up. When the grandmother has all the kids, when she allowed the 2-year-old to go visit with the mom and spend time with the mom, knowing that she had a prior CPS case, knowing that she has has a warrant out for arrest and all that. And maybe she didn't know that she had a warrant out for arrest. I don't know. But did the grandma mess up? Yeah, true, fine. Yes. But to be fair, when the mom was picked up, it's not like the mom was using drugs, the mom was drunk or anything. The warrant for her arrest had nothing to do with that child. It had something to do with the guy that she was with before. Is the 2-year-old better with the grandmother in Missouri, with his siblings? And is the grandmother gonna be better? I mean, she trusted her daughter one too many times, right? Well, or is the child better? In Texas, with a family friend who really didn't have information, that much information. I mean, they passed the background check. Passed. I mean, information. They didn't have the food stamp card and all that stuff. Food stamp card, the Medicaid information, all that. No, actually, the 2-year-old, the Medicare wasn't even Texas, because the child actually lived in Missouri long enough to where it was actually on that state's benefits. Or is the child better off in foster care in Texas? Well, I'm curious about what you guys think about that. I will tell you how it ended is that, yeah, the child was placed with a family friend. And it turned out the grandmother just picked up the child overnight anyway. I mean, think about it. That's probably what's going to happen, right? But then he placed with a family friend or an aunt or whatever down here. If the grandmother was hell bent on getting him back and wanted to get get a lawyer involved and all that, she's probably going to go pick him up. What's best there? Was that the best direction? Was that the best outcome? Well, I think it's better than foster care. I think it's better than trying to work with a mom that wasn't cooperative before, and was playing games and trying to evade and dodge and all that stuff. But how do you guys feel? I mean, it's pretty messy, right? I mean, there's cases. There are times where CPS is investigating a legit case. Something's really going on. Something's going down there. Some abuse and neglect looks like it's happening. And you want them around for that. Well, in this case, I was reading earlier about this Mason, this 5-month-old. They had the brain injury. In that case, on paper, it sounds like abuse. On this case, I know I went off in the woods with some other ones, but on this case with the Mason case, that's a 5-month-old that hit its head in the driveway because the mom left the kid in the chair while she was working, trying to take the wet clothes off the 2-year-old. The 5-month-old fell off the chair and hit its head. That happens. Mistakes happen. Accidents happen. And in that case, goes to the hospital and the doctors say, this looks like abuse. But then a day after that report comes another test saying, hey, this child could have von Willebrand disease, a blood clotting disorder that can lead to excessive bleeding and injuries, and it could explain the injuries. The reason why this happened in the Mason case is because there's different doctors that went to go see him. There is the child abuse team, the care team, the child abuse team, and they are looking for, is this abuse or neglect? Are these injuries consistent with abuse? It wasn't the doctors that were like, okay, how can we treat this injury? Are we going to run some extra tests to see what else is going on with this child? No. Those doctors, they look at x-rays and they make a decision. That's how, in the Mason case, you get it to where the hospital called CPS saying, with allegations of child abuse on this family, and you'll have a doctor at that same hospital that will give information, provide information that says otherwise, that contradicts. And I will tell you now, and you will, I'm pretty sure you will believe this. If you don't, news to you. But in a situation where multiple doctors have disagreements, and let's say doctors in a particular care team or whatever, maybe they have a tenure, maybe they've been around for a lot longer. What they say, for whatever reason, has more weight than what the other doctor says. But really, if I had, I don't know if I had worked that case, but I don't want to do this removal because this doctor's saying this Wilbrand disease could explain why this injury is happening. You have these doctors conflicting with one another. And one's conflicting because of more thorough tests, thorough science, thorough medical examinations. I'm going to go with that doctor. But you get these guys who they are experts. They know. Then they make the calls. Let's see. Let me read a little bit more on this. So yeah, a key test result revealed that Mason may have suffered from von Willebrand disease, a blood clotting disorder. We talked about that. And Jones, the caseworker, reported in a court filing weeks later that when he asked a Texas child social worker for an update, she told him that there was no evidence of any blood problem that could explain the excessive bleeding, which is inaccurate and directly contradicting the notes in the child's medical record. Do caseworkers lie? Yes, they do. They do. They shouldn't. But clearly, in this example, they do. Of course they do. Was it a lie? Or was it that they didn't really look into the information to really honestly report it? Well, that's still a lie. Because it's not the truth. Okay. So, looking further on here, Sung V and Back Kim, both employees of Baylor College of Medicine, a medical school affiliated with Texas Children's, declined through a spokeswoman to be interviewed. In a statement, the Baylor spokeswoman, Lori Williams, said that based on the type and severity of Mason's injury, the doctors were legally obligated to report their concerns. True. That's true. I mean, they are. I mean, in this case with the Mason baby with the head injury, the hospital reported it. They're going to report. They have to report. It was the CPS worker's job, the investigator's job, to get all the information, all of it, before in making the right decision with it. And it's not like the worker didn't have the time to do it. They had plenty of time to do it. Let's see. Our doctors would have been available to provide any additional information CPS may have requested and needed clarifications, Williams said. And like I said, even in this article here, I mean, apparently the family was home for in weeks later, not days, but weeks later is when the CPS worker came with the emergency order, which it doesn't take a week to get that. It takes about 2 days. Actually, it could literally just take a day to get that. Okay. Now, this case, though, is a pretty good example of CPS going overbearing and going on little information. I mean, the judge shut it down and ordered CPS to pay out pretty good money. We'll get into that, too. I'm sure this article will get into it. Now, this is from the Houston Chronicle, so you can read it yourself if you want to. It goes on to say, but a doctor who specializes in diagnosing blood disorders reviewed the medical records on behalf of reporters and said that there was strong evidence that the child suffered from the clotting deficiency. And medical records show that In the weeks and months that followed, Texas children's doctors continued to treat Mason for the disease to prevent excessive bleeding during surgeries. Regardless, Anders wrote, Von Willebrand disease is no way caused or contributed to the child's multiple skull fractures. Based on the seriousness of the doctor's concerns, Child Protective Services determined days after the fall that an in-home monitor would not be enough to protect Mason and his sister. Instead, an agency program director approved sending the kids to Dylan's parents in Baytown. You're getting like foster care here. Placement with the kin. Well, so this isn't foster care. At least there's that so far. I think something changes in this case. This case is so freaking messy. And look what happened here. This what's messy about working with doctors with their information. Look what happened here. So even in this article, it says how you have a doctor who specializes in the diagnosis of blood disorders and be like, okay, yeah, so the child's disorder can explain the blood clots and all that, but still the two skull fractures, not so much. So you get this sort of like, okay, it doesn't support it, but then you can kind of twist it and be like, oh, it does support it. I mean, this is what you're working with. This is what you're working with. This is what a CPS investigator is working with. Someone who has maybe a bachelor's, and someone who is under pressure, and you're working with doctors that give you conflicting information at times. It's like, just tell me, what is it? And we see that now, with COVID. Doctors say one thing. The same doctor, Dr. Fauci, says multiple things that conflict. It's fucking messy. All right, let's see. Let's see if there's something more in this article. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I believe the child had multiple operations as well. Really painful stuff happening, and CPS was just God. This case is actually pretty sad. All the stuff that happened in it. We'll have to get into that. We'll have to have a part 2 and actually read through this case. Rib Cheers, I see your chat. What do you think a proper punishment for these types of false CPS calls should be, Mr. Deadman? The spike calls are completely spike calls. If they're repeated, well, there's already rules. There's already laws about it. The problem is you have to prove it. You have to prove there are laws about making falsified reports. The difficulty in proving that is that CPS workers can't tell you who the reporter is by law. They can't tell you who the reporter is by law. If they were to do that, if they were to tell you the reporter, they could face, they could be fired. They will be fired, and they could face legal consequences too. So you have that. So pretty much nothing happens, sort of. But I've seen examples where stuff happens. I've seen examples where a judge got fed up. What's happening here? I think the virus scanner is going off right now. and it's causing hiccups. But yeah, I've seen it where a case had been repeatedly called in, and that issue came up in court with this particular family, and the judge pretty much ordered him to not be able to report it. It was crazy. So, like I said in the beginning, I am a small government man. I don't want the government to be large and be in your face, in your life, any more than they have to. Okay. Do we need a government to build roads and have some basic stuff? Sure, I guess. I mean, have you driven on a company road? They usually suck. Depends on where you're at. Depends on if the company actually cares about their property. Man, I've driven on some company roads. They're fucking made out of dirt. It's like, come on, do you care? But anyway, yeah, small government guy. I don't want the state involved in families' lives. But there comes a time to where it's required. It's needed. I mean, what's the counter to that? Is there a good counter to that? A good rebuttal against that? Just let kids be abused, continue to be abused by their parents or whatever. That's not good. I mean, we don't want people just going around murdering people and stealing and getting into people's property, violating people's property rights. That's why we have law enforcement, to make sure those laws are enforced. And at the same time, police can be really annoying, very intrusive, can even violate the Constitution. Legally violate the Constitution. When I say that, I mean that their actions are backed by a court that doesn't give a shit about your Constitution. So yeah, I mean, CPS is necessary. It's just, it needs to be better. And you get that how? that's how do you get that? How do you make it better? I couldn't tell you. Better workers? Honest workers? Well, it's not just the workers. It's other factors. It's the information that the caseworkers, other experts, let's say doctors or teachers, principals, therapists, psychologists, the information they give out may be incorrect. It may conflict with someone else's. You know, you have conflicting expert opinions. I mean, honestly, what is a worker supposed to do with that? You could go either way and make a rationale for it. It's messy. That it definitely is. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this rent and chill here. What I'm probably going to do next is spend some time. I'm going to take a break. Come back. Maybe play some Postal 2. So there's that. Grim cheers. It's cool to see you in the chat. I don't think we're... I like people. Like, I like the chat. I do. Just when y'all say ridiculous things that are completely nonsense. Come on now. Come on. All right. Anyway, actually, I don't really care about the ridiculous nonsense in the chat. The only thing that I actually cared about, the thing that kind of grind my gears, I think it was a week ago, right? Was getting butthurt about being annoying. No, we're not enemies. Let's see. Thomas Hemingway. Love it when one parent won't return the kid and a report comes in about talking about how horrible the parent is that they're willingly to send their kid to. Right? Oh, man. We could talk about how CPS is used in custody issues. I think I rented that, or talked about that before. Shit. Do that again. Man. When CPS gets involved in custody issues, and you realize it's a custody issue because it's the allegation would be like physical abuse, but it's over a kid being hit with, and this is Texas, a kid being physically disciplined with, let's say, a bamboo stick hit on the rear or on the thigh, and it left a mark. Okay. Is that abuse in the state of Texas? We're talking about a 14-year-old. So no, not abuse. Not abuse. How you feel about it is how you feel about it. But the statute in the state of Texas, it's not abuse. So that's the direction it's going in. That's the direction that this case is going. But then the person who reported it is like, but what about this? But what about that? They start bringing up other things. I'd be like, oh, but so what? You're just going to allow it to happen? You're just going to allow my daughter or son to be in the house and be hit with a stick? At that point, it's like, well, sir, what can you do about it? If you don't like that, you try to go get an emergency order at the court. You can do that. Go get a lawyer. Go see if you can get an emergency order at the court to modify a custody. And I guarantee you, with this information, you probably won't. You probably won't. The judge will say, well, what about you? What do you do for discipline? And that's the thing. I can't tell you how many times I've worked a case where a person calling in is an ex-wife or ex-husband, and they'll call in with allegations of physical abuse, saying excessive discipline or whatever, and they too spank every now and then. Use the chancla. Use a stick. The parent will deny it, but the kid will tell me. I mean, the kid will tell the worker. If I could grift off of the anti-CPS narrative and be strong against it, I totally would. I would. But the reality is that they are kind of necessary in a way. Oh, Thomas Hemingway. I like what you said. No way. Attorney costs money. CPS route is free. And when I will tell those, what CPS workers would normally tell those families is that CPS is not in the business of modifying your court orders, because they're not. That's not what they do, at least not in Texas. If the state goes to court, they're going to court for the state, not for your family. Like, the CPS attorneys aren't going to be representing the family. I mean, really, and also in those situations, let's say there's actually some sort of abuse going on the other house. Let's say there's actual abuse going on. Let's say let's say you have like a mom and dad, two different households, and there's actual abuse going on in one. Okay. Then you tell that dad or the other person, yeah, you keep that kid. Oh, but the court order says otherwise. You keep that kid. You go get an emergency order right now. Do you have an attorney? Do you have a lawyer? Because we'll put a safety plan in place. We'll do things there. But those aren't permanent. Those sort of policies and soft things only last as long as the case lasts. But if you're unwilling to take protective action, if the other parent is unwilling to take protective action, it starts looking like, well, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to put in the work? Because what's going to happen is it'll be a soft safety plan and stuff, and then we work with a mom with services and all that. Yeah, you've seen it. People are gung-ho. Thomas Hemingway, you're right. You've seen it. People are gung-ho to get something done beyond CPS for free. Tell them to get an attorney to modify their order, and they freeze. That's right. They do. They're like, what? All right. This has been fun. I think next time I will go into something a little bit more, not so heavy. You know, this is a pretty heavy topic. Talk about child abuse and all that. Anyway, you guys take it easy. In about 10 to 15 minutes, I'll be streaming again, playing Postal 2 until midnight, and